Welcome to Unbreak Marketing. Today I've got Dan Merrill back with me. We had a great podcast last time and we knew that there was more we were going to have to cover. And so in today's episode, we're going to hit some of that. Today we're going to talk about the power of SDRs and BDRs and whether that's broken in your go-to-market engine. So Dan, first help us understand what are these and how would somebody know if this is broken in their organization?
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan. Great question and good to be back. I think the best place to start this is just having an appreciation for the sales roles that a lot of companies have. And we're just coming off the football season. Let's think about it this way. Oftentimes companies ask their salespeople to play almost every position on a team. So imagine if you asked your quarterback also to manage all the kickoffs, punt returns, play safety on defense. And when you're on offense, you're just going to have that quarterback either run the ball or pass the ball on every single down. I think most of us would agree that even if you had the best athlete in the world, that is probably not the best game plan for a winning football team. But businesses oftentimes, as they grow and scale, inadvertently do the same thing with their sales team, as they ask one person or a small group of people to manage every aspect of the sales process and ask them to be really, really good at everything from developing leads and maturing those to opportunities and eventually closing them, and even sometimes even managing customer sat issues and solving problems and putting out fires.
Yeah, I think that this is something that from a marketing perspective, a lot of times there's not a good understanding of this. Because of that, there's sometimes overlap where both teams are trying to either address the same part or nobody's really addressing that. This is important for everyone in the go-to-market team to understand is what position can we play best? And do we have people who can best fill that position right now in place?
In fact, I think that's the key to understanding this, is that they're very different skills. Probably why I use the football analogy is that it's not just about athleticism, kicking a ball, throwing a ball, playing defense. They actually require different skill sets. And ultimately on a sales team, when you start talking about like a sales development role, a business development role, account management roles, they actually involve a lot of different skills and capabilities where if you don't have the right people, you're not really going to get the results that you're looking for. And your sales are going to struggle and you're going to have some gap in your process as a result of not having the right talent on your team.
So you mentioned one of the potential things people could look out for there is that their sales are just not performing as well.
Sure.
What are some other indicators that this might be broken?
Yeah, I think it's early in the process as we really start seeing the gaps. So I think companies sometimes have one or two problems on the marketing and kind of lead development side of the business. So one issue is we just don't have a lot of leads. So we have a gap and we're looking for ways. We've done a lot of campaigns, we've sent a lot of emails, whatever we've done, but it's just not generated a high volume of leads. That's something to consider investing in. Secondly would be is I've got a volume of leads. So the marketing team's done a great job. They've got this whole influx of leads coming into the system, but the conversion of those is stalling out. And you probably have a lot of chatter around the team about how either the leads aren't very good or the sales team isn't following up on them. Those mantras that we always hear, those are probably really strong indicators that you have a gap. And it's likely the roles and responsibilities that you actually have in your organization that could be the cause.
Yeah. And also you mentioned this earlier, we were talking, this might lead to your sales team feeling unhappy about doing a particular role. They might be avoiding doing that particular phase just because they don't have a strength in there. They know it's not their strength. So let's map these now, these potential causes to the roles that you talked about, because especially SDR and BDR, these roles, what they do and what they mean is not maybe universally understood. So maybe map those out, what a BDR is versus an SDR. Are they different and what do they do?
Yeah, great question. And I think a lot of businesses use those words interchangeably, so we see it as the same role. But a sales development role is typically someone who is qualifying inbound leads. So it's an inbound type of motion. So you have that really nice lead funnel being developed, marketing's producing a lot of volume, but these are individuals that are really good at maturing those leads, qualifying them, making sure that they are ready for the sales process. Whereas a business development role is more of an outbound motion. So it's where someone is doing a lot of cold calling or cold emailing or using social media to do a lot of outreach to actually go find new leads, mature those and develop them into the sales funnel as well.
Yeah. Both are areas that could be an overlap between sales and marketing, both the business development and the sales development. And having a good understanding of what those roles are and determining in the organization who's going to do what is really key, because marketing can still support, even if you do have a BDR, for instance. That BDR is going to need content and support from marketing. Same thing with an SDR. SDRs could use help from a marketing team. So really, there's a great opportunity there to mesh and to work well together.
Definitely. In fact, I've seen it done both ways really well. In my last organization, we actually had those sales development, business development roles actually as part of our marketing team because they saw it as an extension of lead development. So not just producing a contact, but actually being part of the maturation of those leads into truly that sales qualified lead that we commonly point to. And it worked really, really well. I felt like it almost gave more engagement to the marketing activities, knowing that the end result wasn't just producing a lead in a system, but producing an actual viable sales opportunity.
There really is a funnel there, and being able to understand at each stage where your bottlenecks are, address those, and see how they progress onward is really rewarding for anyone who's working at those early stages, because just producing a number is not nearly as exciting as hearing that person that you worked on move through the stages and eventually become a customer and a loyal customer.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, I think that's one of the probably the best things any organization can do is start realizing that all those activities are really just trying to produce sales. They're trying to produce growth and revenue for the company. Everybody wins when that's the result. And as a result, when we start working together on this and understanding these different roles and responsibilities, I've become a big believer in specializing roles. And you get just such brilliant results if you can actually start thinking that way, with having, again, those different players on a team that get really good at one thing. We touched on this earlier, is that the skill involved with picking up the phone and making outbound phone calls and trying to persuade someone to have a conversation with you is an entirely different capability than developing a lasting relationship with a client and helping mature a longer, complex sale towards the finish line. Very different personality types. One is almost driven off of like instant gratification and they live in the moment. Whereas the other one is much more invested in that long-term outcome and the quality of that relationship over time. And the more we appreciate that, the better results we get.
Absolutely. So let's say someone has heard this and said, Dan, I hear you. I think this is broken in my organization. What are the steps that someone could do to start fixing that?
So definitely talk to someone like myself that actually knows how to help frame this and help build a strategy. But the other good news to this, because certainly one of the big roadblocks that I think I hear most often is that everything we just described sounds like it's expensive. We just added several new headcount, several new roles to your organization. That sounds like an investment that could be a bit much. These development roles can easily be outsourced. There's great companies out there that actually can bring them to you on even a fractional or part-time basis. So they're very scalable. You literally could start with someone just doing this a few hours a week for just a fraction of the cost of a full-time employee. You can test it, you can mature it, and you can scale that until you get the results you're looking for. It makes it extremely viable and accessible for most businesses.
Yeah. I think from an expense standpoint, having a whole lot of leads that you pay for that don't convert is expensive too. So if you're paying $1,000 for a lead and you're only converting maybe 2 or 3% of those leads into actual opportunities, that's very, very expensive. It was probably cheaper to have a fractional SDR there to qualify and nurture some of those. So if your conversion rate only goes up to maybe 5% or 10%, now you've not only paid for that role, but now you're actually getting a return that's very high on that SDR. So yeah, definitely, I think it's just a matter of mindset of thinking of what is more expensive here. Is it the initial cost of testing this, or is it keeping the status quo and maybe really having these bad conversion numbers?
Yeah, well said, Jonathan. And I think one of the nice parts too is that this is one of those places where a true ROI can be measured very easily. You can really see your investments versus the outcomes and start really determining if you're investing in the right things and getting the return you're looking for.
Yeah, excellent ideas there, Dan. Thank you so much for explaining the difference between SDR, BDR, talking about how somebody might identify that in an organization and then how they might fix it.
Thanks for having me out here today, and I appreciate the time.